Hey everyone. So today we're going to peel back the curtain on the world of finance and look at something that's, well, kind of invisible, but it holds the entire thing together. We are talking about the Code of Ethics for Accountants, this hidden framework that's literally the bedrock of all financial trust.
So let me ask you this. What is it that actually keeps the incredibly complex, high-stakes world of finance from just collapsing into chaos? Your first thought might be, oh, it's all the laws and regulations. But honestly, that's only half the story.
The real guardian here isn't a person or a single law. It's this powerful shared code of professional ethics. This is the unseen force that guides accountants and auditors, making sure the numbers we all depend on are actually trustworthy. At the end of the day, it's all about protecting the public interest.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the big why this stuff matters so much. Then we'll get into the 5 core principles every accountant has to live by. After that, we'll look at the kinds of threats that challenge those principles and the safeguards used to fight back. We'll even see how it all plays out when deciding to take on a new client. And then we'll wrap it all up.
Okay, first things first, why should you care about any of this? Well, think about it. The whole point of an audit, the entire reason it exists, is to give people confidence in a company's financial information. It doesn't matter if you're an investor, a bank, or just a regular person, you have to be able to trust that the numbers are real. And that trust, it's built completely on the idea that the accountant is ethical and independent.
Now here's what I find really fascinating. It's the philosophy behind the code. See, this isn't some giant rigid rule book where you just tick boxes. No, it's what we call a principles-based framework. And that is so important because it forces accountants to use their professional judgment. It's about following the spirit of the code, not just the letter of the law. This approach is way more flexible, and it's designed to stop people from hunting for clever loopholes. It makes you stop and think, what's the right thing to do here?
And that leads us right to the heart of it all. We're talking about the 5 fundamental principles that are the absolute, non-negotiable pillars of the accounting profession. You can really think of this as the Guardian's Code.
So here they are, the big 5. These are the standards every single professional accountant has to follow. You've got integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. Let's break a couple of these down, starting with what is arguably the most important.
So, integrity. This is the big one. And it's so much more than just don't lie. It's about being actively straightforward, totally honest. It means having the moral backbone to do what's right, especially when it's hard, and to always deal with people fairly and truthfully.
And believe me, this isn't just theory. Here's a real case from the ACCA Disciplinary Committee. A member literally signed off on an audit report without doing any of the work. I mean, that's a massive breach of integrity. It's just fundamentally dishonest. And the consequences are no joke. We're talking huge fines, even getting kicked out of the profession for good. It just goes to show you how seriously this stuff is taken. But of course, living by these principles isn't always a walk in the park. The professional world can feel like a minefield, full of conflicts and pressures that can really test an accountant's judgment. And in the code, these are called threats.
So, the code breaks these threats down into 5 main categories, which you can see here. There's self-interest, self-review, advocacy, familiarity, and intimidation. Let's dig into a couple of these a little more. A self-interested threat is pretty much what it sounds like. It's any situation where your own financial or personal interests could cloud your professional judgment. So, for example, if you own shares in a company you're auditing, well, you might be tempted to overlook some problems to keep that share price high. Or maybe one client accounts for like 80% of your firm's revenue. You might be afraid to make a tough call for fear of losing them.
Then you have a self-review threat. This one is like being asked to grade your own homework. It's just really hard to be objective. And this happens when you're asked to reevaluate work that you or your firm already did. Like, if your firm prepared a company's books, how can you then turn around and audit those same books with a truly skeptical eye? You're probably not going to be too eager to find or admit to your own mistakes.
The other 3 are just as important. You've got an advocacy threat, which is when you're pushing a client's position so hard, like negotiating a deal for them, that you lose your objectivity. Then there's the familiarity threat. This one sneaks up on you over time. You have a long relationship with a client, you become friends, and you just get too trusting. And finally, the intimidation threat. That's when a client tries to pressure you, maybe by threatening to fire your firm to get you to back down.
So with this minefield of threats out there, how does a professional get through it safely? Well, this is where the code provides what you can think of as a toolkit of safeguards.
A safeguard is basically just an action you take to either get rid of a threat completely or, more often, bring it down to what's called an acceptable level. So what's an acceptable level? It's the point where an objective, reasonable person looking at the situation would say, yeah, okay, their judgment isn't compromised. It's the practical, real-world response to an ethical risk.
And this brings us to the Guardian's compass for working through these challenges. It's a really clear, logical process. Step 1, you identify any threats. Step 2, you figure out how significant they are. And Step 3, you apply the right safeguards to handle them.
Let's just quickly walk through that. Step 1 is all about being vigilant. What could possibly go wrong here? Step 2 is evaluation. Okay, how serious is this threat? Is it a small thing, or could it really damage my objectivity? And finally, Step 3 is action. What am I going to do about it? What specific safeguards can I use to either eliminate the threat or bring it down to that acceptable level we just talked about?
Okay, now let's see how this all comes together in one of the biggest decisions an audit firm has to make: deciding whether to even take on a new client. This is where the rubber really meets the road. Before a single piece of work starts, the firm does what's basically a client screening. And this whole process is a fantastic example of ethics in action because it's proactive. They're looking at everything from their own ability to stay independent all the way to the integrity of the client's management team.
The key takeaway here is that firms have to ask these tough questions right at the start. Questions like, can we actually stay objective here? Do we think this management team is honest? Do we even have the right skills for this industry? They even have to contact the previous auditor to see if there are any professional reasons they should walk away. It's a whole checklist they go through to make sure they can uphold the code before they even say yes.
All right, let's bring this home and talk about the bigger picture. Because this ethical code isn't just a set of rules for accountants. It has a huge impact on every single one of us.
At the end of the day, it really boils down to this. Trust is the currency our entire economy runs on. You trust that a company's financial reports are legit when you invest your retirement savings. You trust that banks are stable. This ethical code and the professionals who uphold it is the system that backs that currency. It's what makes all that trust possible.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. In a world with such complex finance, where the numbers on a screen can feel so disconnected from reality, the integrity and the judgment of the people behind those numbers matter more than they ever have. So the next time you look at a financial report or make an investment, just ask yourself, who are you trusting to be the guardian?